Hello, it's me again talking about hair triggers. Now in the last video I was only talking about the length of the trigger pull, and now when we are talking about a hair trigger, it is a combination of a very light trigger pull and very short trigger pull. So in the last video was about the distance, so this video is about the how easy it is to pull the trigger, or how loud it is. Now there is a bit of a limit on how light you can make the trigger, simply because of how the switch mechanism works. So now this is about as light as it can be, practically, because there's two reasons. First off, there's a limit on how light the return spring can be on the trolley here, because if it's too light there is a risk that it won't return normally or completely if there is some debris or dirt in there. So there has to be some level of strength on the spring so that it will for sure return and not stay in the forward position, because then the gun would be dangerous and it would potentially start firing on its own or not stop firing when when the shooter lets go of the trigger. So that's one thing. And the second thing is the trigger itself. Now, because of the switch mechanism, the semi-auto once it's cycled, there it release the switch trolley here, and now the trigger is resetting. Now that click sound is from when the lip on the trigger hooks up with the shear on the switch trolley, and so there has to be some force pulling this trigger forward so that it will quickly and every time will catch. So I'm just gonna quickly open up this gearbox now. Now there isn't any trigger springs available on the market that would make your trigger pull lighter, so I actually had to fabricate my own trigger spring. It's surprisingly easy. All you really need is some spring set. I really recommend you buying some spring sets. Let me show mine. This is my spring set. It contains all sorts of different kind of springs, and in this case I took one of these, and with a pair of pliers I can basically bend this into shape, whatever shape I want. Now, because the load isn't very big, it doesn't matter if you just bend the spring, because now some people could say that you're breaking the spring and it will become weak, but in my experience that just doesn't happen really. So it might be true with some larger springs with more load on them, but not with these really. So now with this new spring the trigger tends to pop out a bit. I hope it stays in now. Yes, it is. So this was the previous trolley spring I had. Now this is smaller than the one that's in there now, so you might say that this could be lighter than this one, but in fact this is much more stiffer than the one I have now in here. So I don't know what brand spring this is, but you could buy some SHS version 7 spring sets. Those come with some really small springs like this that could probably work really nicely here. The springs on the version 7 gearbox are, I mean, there's a switch mechanism on it, has those really small springs like this, even more smaller, so those could potentially work. But if you have a bunch of these springs, just compare them to each other and take the one that's the lightest to pull, and it will function. And then the trigger spring, these trigger spring are made it's really light. So yeah. I don't think there's anything more about this one, so this is probably the last video about hair triggers from me. So thank you for watching again.